Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, everyone. Stephen Schwartz, good morning. Lorelei, hello.
Morning.
Hi, Rick.
Mr.
What's
Hurd?
in your mug? Sorry. What's in your mug? I got curious.
Oh,
Can't see it. Oh, I want to read it. Oh.
it's you can't read it with this background.
Yeah.
Can't read it with this background. It says I'm fantastic. I don't know if it's true or not, but it has a likeness of Mr. Trump. That would be the president. See him there?
Yeah, can see it now.
Barry? Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm outstanding.
Well, we're hearing that.
He's gonna get a new
Somebody
shirt.
thinks
I'm
so.
outstanding. It's a gift idea for Rick. I'm outstanding.
Yes.
And just so you know, Rick, I added a new page for the Friday sessions Better Speak, so it's there.
Yeah, great.
If anyone missed Rick's session, obviously you can send Rick an email if you want to find out about 20 groups.
Yeah. Mr. Hurd, how are you this morning?
I'm excellent, Rick. Nice to see you.
Thank you, sir. We usually wait until about 9:05 or so, give everybody an opportunity to get on before we get started.
I'll be adding people even if they come on after 8:05 because some of them are a little slow in the morning on Mondays. Especially out west because it's early. I also did send some email out to different HR companies, different HR for different groups and even for the OEM. So we may see an OEM or an HR group manager on too. It's possible. We shall see.
Hey, it's Pam. Hello, Pam.
Good morning. How are you today?
Excellent.
Perfect.
We just determined that before you got on.
Oh. Oh, I thought it was just because I joined.
Well, I'm better now.
We're coming up with t-shirt gift ideas for Rick. To match the mug, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually saw someone on the weekend. They were talking about how the Trump campaign missed their marketing opportunity to sell face masks with "Make America Great Again" on them.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I'm surprised they didn't do that.
Yeah, you'd figure that would be a good sellable item. But obviously it didn't happen.
Well, then he'd have to wear one.
I don't No, I just think, I thought it was interesting. I was kind of surprised. But there is distinctive data saying that does help, but I don't know if that's true.
I wear a face mask everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my husband just had heart surgery, so I'm
Right.
terrified to bring it home.
I actually got one when I went to China for my MBA last year, which was for pollution, but it scares people when you wear it for anything else. Let's see here.
There's a lot of people off this week.
Yeah, what's going on? Oh, it's because end of month end, maybe.
Well, also because, July 1st and in the US, July 4th, they take the whole week off, you guys down there.
Yeah, some people do.
Or the topic is HR.
Which is another reason they're not here.
I thought
People
we'd
ask me
flood
what
the
I do.
airways.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I thought we'd flood the airways with this topic. This is a very important topic.
As an
Oh,
HR
100% agree.
professional, honestly, as an HR professional, I've taken to when people ask me what I do, I say I help dealers protect their profits. I don't even mention HR anymore.
Because they're that resistant to HR? Wow.
I personally, my feeling is that human resources professionals have responsibility in that perception of HR, of that we're the police and we are so detail-y that who's got time for it? The devil really is in the details. But, anyway, I could talk for a while about how HR has responsibility in the general perception that our industry often has about HR. So.
Right.
But that's not the topic today. So.
Yeah. So do you want to give another minute or so, Rick, and then we'll start?
Yeah, we might as well get started.
Okay.
They'll join as they come in.
Okay. I'll just add them as they come. So I'm good. You have this, oh, you guys said that. Okay.
Okay, everyone can see my screen, I assume?
Yep.
Yes? Okay, without any further delay, we will get started. The normal housekeeping items that we talk about every week. This is everyone's meeting. Please mute and unmute yourself if you have distractions. Raise your hand. We'll be happy to call on you. And with this small group, you can just shout out. We'd love to hear from everybody. There's a lot of knowledge on the call, so we'd love to share your ideas. Be open to other people using them as well. So the forum is here to help dealers. It's open discussion. Your input is valuable. Please speak up. Ask questions, specifically ask questions of the guest speakers. It's important that that we learn from them. This is an opportunity. It's a learning opportunity. So let's stay on topic and don't burn up too much time. Be respectful to the other speakers on the call. But as I said, please do ask questions and challenge the speakers. Speakers, no selling, please, of your products or services. So today we're going to talk about human resources. And we call it 101 because it's the first of a series that we're going to be putting together for human resources. In 2020, specific to today's conversation, how do you screen and evaluate candidates? We've got all got our old school ways and our old thoughts of how to screen and evaluate candidates. I know guilty as charged that I still feel that some of the best practices that I use are some of the things that I learned in 1989. How about you? Right? Onboarding. Yeah, 1989. And I still haven't given them up yet. and I still trust them, believe it or not. Although we have had a generational change, you know, there's a lot of people guilty, just like me. How to onboard new hires, re-onboard past employees that we've lost for COVID-19. So we have two wonderful speakers. Jessi Kessel is Director of Operations, Auto Careers Group, and Sandy Zannino, Innovative Automotive HR. We have HR in our title. We have HR in our title. So there's a picture of Jessi and Sandy. What lovely ladies. Thank you so much for joining our call today. Your experience and knowledge is instrumental in helping us with our objective today. So Friday sessions have become a little bit more clearly defined. We're going to give an opportunity for the participants on the call to spend some one-on-one time with the guest speakers. So on Friday, you'll hear more about it. You're going to see it posted up on our website. So please visit the website, autohubclub.com. You're certainly going to receive correspondence and emails from Ian in regards to the Friday sessions. If you miss them, they will be recorded and posted up on our website. So please don't hesitate to hit the website, autoclubhub.com. So how do you staff for success in 2020? Let's get this call started. How do you meet staff demands? How do you decide who to rehire? I'd love to hear your feedback on that, Jessi and Sandy. How do you make those decisions, those choices? How will onboarding be different the second time around when you bring your people back in? And can your dealership get by with less staff? What is the new normal? So with that said, let's get the show started, Mr. Nethercott.
Yeah. So I'm going to introduce Jessi. Jessi I've known for several years. She just joined, I think, a few months ago, Auto Careers Group as Director of Operations out of Toronto. Auto Careers Group helps dealers find staff. She has a lot of knowledge, not only in the marketing spectrum, but also in HR. So I guess my first question for you, Jessi, was how do you source good candidates?
Hi, everyone. Well, thanks for having me on. So I did join about 9 months ago, and I came from a marketing and sales background, and I had to really learn myself what it meant to recruit for the auto industry. And I think my I guess perception when I first came into this was that you post a job ad, you wait for some resumes to come in, and then you interview those people. And I've now come to learn that is only a fraction of the process when it comes to hiring. But for what I've seen is that dealerships are still only hiring based on that one fraction. So, you know, you're posting the ads, you're waiting for the resumes to come in, and you're interviewing based on who's available at that time. The other portion of that is hunting, and that's why we're often called headhunters, because we are going after qualified candidates that are still working through our own networks, and we're having to pick up the phone and cold call, and through our connections get to the people that we want to get to. So when it comes to, I guess, that perception that there isn't good talent out there, quality talent out there, I think we really have to just look at our process and see, you know, who's getting in front of us, and are we reaching out to people as well? Because to have a good hiring process, you need to do both.
Okay. So with so many job seekers in the market right now, is it difficult to identify the good from the bad? I mean, I know there's some challenges specifically around recruiting technicians in auto, but is those challenges true whether it be a manager or salesperson or a parts person or, anyone in the front or back end of that.
Right. Well, things have obviously changed a lot since before COVID, but I can say there are a lot more people that are available today on the job market, which makes the hiring process even more important now than before. What I'm seeing is that we, in dealerships, we have like an interview process. But if you look at more of the agency model, what we're doing is we have more of an evaluation and assessment process, which is different. So we're not just focusing on the interview and the questions that we ask in the interview, but we're looking at it as a 5-step process to really evaluate someone's skill sets and qualifications, and we're assessing them throughout this process. So it's a 5-step process, which starts with sourcing the candidate, which I mentioned includes both receiving resumes, but then also going after qualified people. We're pre-qualifying people on a phone call before we even get to the interview. And the pre-qualification has its own purpose as well. I mean, one, you want to speak to the individual and really find out what their current situation is right now and why they're even interested, in working at your location. There's a lot of things that you can find out during a pre-qualification call, which takes anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes before you spend the time to sit down with someone for an hour or 2 hours, and go through the steps.
So
we're
Jessi,
also, yep.
Jessi, on that subject, before you change subject,
Yes.
on that pre-qualification call
Yes.
that you just mentioned, you said there's a lot of things that you can find out, right, about that
Yeah.
candidate to even help yourself make a decision whether you'd like to bring them in to talk to them in person. Can you tell us what those things are? What if I wanted to do one of those calls today? I got a resume. I like the resume. I want to do that pre-qualification call. What do I say? What do I ask?
Well, for one, what I always say, slow it down. Usually when you get on a phone call with someone, they tend to speak quickly. So slow that process down a little bit and re-ask questions during that time. So I'll give you an example. When I'm trying to find out, what someone's current situation is, are they employed? Were they laid off? What happened? Not everyone is straight up and forthcoming, and they'll say something like, oh, I left there in March. Well, I left there in March doesn't really tell me how they left or why they left and if they're going back. So I try to slow them down and ask them questions like, were you packaged out? If you were packaged out, it tells me more about their current situation versus, I just left there and you just take it for what it is. So I like to dig a little bit deeper with a few more in-depth questions, like really why they left, right? Were they laid off? What happened? And get them talking a little bit more.
So with that said, is that important to you, why they left? Does it matter to you that they left because they were terminated for cause, or because you're not going to eliminate them, right, from the process because they were terminated for cause from the last position,
Nope.
or are you?
It really depends on what you're looking for. I think and what the position is, right? And how, it really depends. Like, it's not a straightforward answer. If you're looking for someone in maybe a more executive level, or you're looking for someone who's going to be in a sales role, it is important because what you start to see is a pattern, right? And that's what you're looking for, is a pattern in someone's career.
Yeah.
Do they stay there for a few months and then jump? And then why did they jump? So you want to find out what we refer to as RFL, reason for leaving. And so we want to see what that pattern is. And yes, sometimes it will disqualify them from going further.
So what
And sometimes not.
when I'm looking at, let's just say, a dealership who does an ad on Craigslist, or they do an ad in other places, and they deal with all these resumes, you know, where do you find that they fall down? I mean, where do you find that they have challenges? Is it the volume of resumes? I mean, what do you think?
So you were breaking out. I didn't hear the question. Can you
Is
repeat
it
that?
the volume of resumes that do you feel dealerships get from ads, or is it the wrong place they add, or they just don't screen them, or what? You know, where could they do a better job?
So I think what I was talking about is where you can do a better job is where you have to look at it as a process where you're assessing people from beginning to end, and not just going, oh, I like, you know, this person held whatever position, you know, and they qualified just based on the fact that they have that title. Let's get them in and let's get them, you know, let's have a conversation with them. I think just doing more in-depth digging will put more qualified people in front of you when you get to the interview. So, I mean, the pre-qualifying is one portion of it, and then using tools for evaluating and assessing. So this is one of our secret weapons, is that we use assessment tools like personality tests, sales tests, IQ tests to evaluate the candidate and see where their strengths are, but also see maybe where their weaknesses are. And that's important, because if you're going into an interview without that information, you're kind of going into it blind, right? And the testing really allows us to focus in on those things that we want to know more about, right? So if they scored really low on ethics, we want to probe a little bit more when it comes to that. You know, if let's say cold calling is, you know, something that's important in the sales process, and they scored really low on that, they might, it won't disqualify them necessarily, but that's an area maybe where they're going to need more training, and maybe you probe a little bit more on asking them specific questions that pertain to those things. So, you know, it really is our secret weapon, because without it, we don't have that guidance to know how to really use the interview to its fullest without knowing that information. So that's the interview. And then the last thing in our 5-step process is reference checks.
Right.
We do reference checks, not only the references that they give you, because most of the time, you know, those are going to come out pretty good. But we often say, you know, the auto industry it's a large industry, but it's a small industry as well, because a lot of us tend to know one another. So, you know, if you're familiar with that dealership, or you know someone that used to work there, I would do some more digging and just kind of, you know, make a few phone calls and get some more intel, and just see if there's, you know, that consistency across the board. And make sure when you're doing reference checks that you're asking for a reference of someone that person reported to in the past.
Right.
Because as we know, coworkers who we spend a lot of time with and can be friends with outside of work might not give you all of the details that you want to know.
And, you know, I mean, I'm sure you don't get this objection from dealers in terms of, not to sell, but in terms of cost of your services. But do you feel that dealers choose to use your services more for manager level placement, or are they open to different things?
I would say now it's more manager level, but we do get everything in between. It really, you know, really depends. Often when, you know, a client has used us and has had a really good experience, they'll normally come back to us. But it depends, you know, everyone's situation is different. I don't want to kind of generalize. There are some dealership groups that have HR departments, some that don't. But I think, you know, one of the objections that we get is related to, you know, the cost of our fees. And it's a misconception, I think, when, you know, people think that because you don't use a recruiting firm, that hiring doesn't actually cost you anything. And it's not true, because it obviously costs you your time. It costs you money to post a job. And as we all know, turnover is pretty high at dealerships. I think it's like 40% in a dealership, but specifically like in a sales department, it's 80%.
Wow.
And an even more shocking stat than that, women on the sales floor, the turnover is 99%.
Wow,
So there's, of course, the cost to turnover as well. And it's something we've really focused on, just so that we know, like, are we doing a good job? And we took a look at that number, and because we have a 6-month guarantee, the number of people that we have to replace as an agency is 9%. So it's a lot lower, which obviously saves you money in the long term. But don't take my word for it. I really encourage everyone to take a look at their own process and to see who the hiring managers are, who's spending their time, having to go through the process internally, who's involved, and calculate it yourself. How many hours it's taking you to do all that, how much turnover you have, and take a look at the comparison that way.
Why do you feel the number's so high for women in auto in terms of the turnover?
It's a good question. A lot of it has to do from day one. And I think Sandy will probably talk more about this, but it's from day one, how they get onboarded, how they get, introduced and assimilated into the team, and the things that, that happen after that. They're all contributing factors. So I think we definitely have room for improvement there on how to do a better job, but the numbers don't lie. So.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie. The thing that comes to my mind when we're talking about this is not, and it's not specific to males or females. There's tremendous turnover in our industry. We have a systemic problem with training, but we'll put that conversation aside. Our industry has a systemic problem when it comes to training our associates, and we need to improve in that regard. But with that said, a first impression always lasts much longer, right? So I want to bring Sandy into the conversation, and let's talk about, and Jessi, thank you. Certainly don't go away, because we're going to come right back to you. But what are some of the things, Sandy, that once Jessi has found us a good candidate, let's say it's a middle manager candidate, once Jessi has found us a new candidate, what are some of the things that we're just not doing right that we need to fix?
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for having me on this call. It really is. We've talked already about a lot of things, and the world has changed, particularly with the COVID crisis. Jessi mentioned the talent pool is different. It's not a pool anymore, right? It's an ocean, and like Jessi said, and you just talked about training, Rick, and I think that it's really another piece is really important to train our managers about how to interview. And we all know they walk in the door. I mean, we've all been in this industry for a while, so my experience with managers is that really when they get their first interview, as soon as that candidate hits the door, they've made a decision whether they're going to hire that person or not. So as far as your actual question of what do we do next, right? Once we've identified these candidates, and our issue of turnover, that Jessi's numbers are right on, and absolutely real. And that also is not a big secret. We've struggled with this for a long time. So I recently heard something that I think applies, and that's, we can't have a simple solution to a complex problem. You can't apply. So I don't believe, and I haven't believed, that there's this one-shot panacea that is going to fix our turnover problem. And we kind of saw that, at least I saw it in around 2017. There was a lot of chatter when a lot of talk about turnover and this, oh my God, 76% in sales turnover, right? And there was a lot of chatter in the industry about culture. And what I heard was, we create a culture that these candidates will want to stay in, and then we won't have a turnover problem anymore. Well, what happened the following year is that turnover went up after all this chatter. And so there's more to it. I think it's a big issue. And also Jessi mentioned something that I actually wrote down. She said, when she's interviewing candidates, she wants to know, why are they even interested in working at your location? So that's a really, really good question, and something that I think that dealers should start thinking about, particularly with something that Rick mentioned about generations, because the new generations want something different. So the first step, I think, I have become convinced that it's about onboarding. I think that I know I have my own story of the first day walking into a dealership and saying, "Hi, I'm Sandy. I'm here for my first day." And somebody looks at me like, wait a minute. And then they call somebody, and then that manager might come over and say, "Oh, I forgot you were coming. Sit down over here and read some product, and I'll get back to you." Or maybe even go to lunch and come back and we'll be ready. So, so we all have these stories, right, of these first days. Imagine if you have a new employee and they come in the door and they say, "Hi, I'm Sandy. I'm here for my first day." And somebody says, "Awesome. We've been expecting you right this way." And they're taken into a room and they're told to grab a snack and some coffee, and the presentation will start, right? And that's what is the beginning of really good onboarding. Onboarding your first day at work is, it's super important. People are actually making a stay-go decision, and that might be changing in the unemployment environment that we're in right now, but that's not going to be our forever. You know, we're not going to have this giant talent ocean forever. But they're making a stay-go decision within the first 3 days, and that's based on, their experience. So one of the things that I talk about a lot is that, we have in our industry, customer experience is very important. In what I do, all my customers are internal. And so I do think that it's important that dealers begin to look at their employees as their customer. It is and when you can kind of like change the lens that way, you can begin to create programs that achieve a lot of things. And I'll show you what I have a slide, actually. I'll show it. And let's see. Oops. Let me share my screen. So can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
So this is, in the background, is a picture that I use with permission of Liza Borchis from CMA. This is a picture of what her orientation onboarding day, what it looks like. So a long time ago, I created a program like this, and I learned to spin it as the day before the first day, right? Because what I understand is that sales managers, service managers, they want that body. They've hired this person and they need them to get to work, right? They need that body on the floor. However, when you're doing an onboarding for all of your employees, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity, number one, to get all the pesky stuff that I'm not going to talk about, all the compliance, right? No matter what country you're in, there are processes and certain paperwork that has to be done. It's also an opportunity to introduce this new employee this new asset to your culture, right? And show them what you're about. It's your place to communicate. Tell them how to communicate. How does your group communicate? Are you, what is the chain of command? It's about getting them connected, right? Because this is your beginning of engaging your employees, really bringing them in. And that is engagement is about, that's where you're really going to make a change in turnover. And it's also your opportunity to get all of the training. I know that there's safety trainings that need to be done. There are, Jessi talked about some different kinds of trainings. The other thing that I think it's really important is my last bullet point. Whoever in your organization does this should be a cheerleader for your organization. They should love your dealership and love working for you, and should be able to articulate why. So that's a very long answer to the question.
Yeah, I think that in the chat came up an interesting conversation or an interesting subject, and I want to bring to the table, and maybe Jessi, you can chime in, or anyone for that matter. But we talked about two things that I found very interesting that I think we can sink our teeth into. Number one, employee is an asset. It's a dealership asset. That's number one. So we'll parlay off of that in just a second. And then number two, that the employees are the customers, right? That's our customer. That I have to satisfy my employees. If I had that culture, created that culture, that my employees are my customers. If my employees are dissatisfied, means my customers are dissatisfied. And they will in turn carry that to my retail consumer, right? So there's a customer and a consumer. And I'd like to hear your input on that, Jessi, when it comes to the employee being an asset to the dealership, and number two, to the employee being a customer.
That question
Sorry.
was for Jessi, right? Okay.
Had to unmute myself here. It's interesting. We often, when we talk about candidates, right, and their qualifications. What's interesting is, since I started working here, we also have to qualify our clients, because it's very important to us that you're not placing people in organizations that we can't stand behind. So I think, to be able to attract good people, good talented people who want to work hard and do well, you have to be the organization that person wants to, ultimately work and stay at. So, I mean, yes, when it comes to your employee as an asset, absolutely, 100% agree with that.
Sandy, you told us about the employee being the customer. So talk to us about employer-employee relationships.
Well, I mean, I really do believe that if we switch our lens and look at our internal customers, and that really, I learned this through experience, and how it can change a lot of things in the dealership, right? I've never been a external customer facing employee in the dealership world. However, growing up, I grew up with a very customer service orientation, right? I grew up in this little grocery store where I watched my father know the names of all of our customers and deliver customer service. So it was really natural for me when I started doing what I do to turn that. And it's only been like the last few years that I've been able to articulate, like, hey, this is what I was doing. What I have are customers, I've got 3 sets. I've got the company, the dealer is my customer, the managers, helping them in whatever way that they need help. They are my customers. And the last customer is the employee. And there is, when you can do that, there is really, I call it my secret sauce, really, because there is some magical thing that really kind of happens, because all of those relationships with my internal customers are based in trust. So when I have employees that trust me, when I have managers that trust me, and when I have a dealer that trusts me, or your HR person, I'm coming from my experience, there is really some synergy that can happen. And the dealer, I worked for a dealer for 18 and a half years. And the best evidence that I can give is that the turnover at that dealership was about 32%, which is so well under what it is today, and all over our industry. So it's important. It's important. The only way to do that, to change mindset, is to just change your mindset. Decide to put your glasses on a different way.
So I hear you saying things from 30,000 feet. Change your culture. Get a better relationship with your employees. Employees are customers. That's great. Can you get granular and tell us what we should be doing? What are we not doing and what we should be doing? What are some of the things we're missing?
Okay. Well, you're absolutely right.
Physical things that we're not doing that we should be doing.
Well, the first thing that you should do is the onboarding process. Get with your people, figure out, this is not rocket science. Like, this stuff is not rocket science. That's going to be your first step, and bring everybody in. You're going to have a list of, no matter what country you're in, you're going to have a list of the housekeeping that you have to do. And you're right, Rick, I do often talk at 30,000 feet, because I had a dealer who, when I would try and get too detaily, he would be like, Sandy, literally talk to me at 30,000 feet. So, because it's the details, the devil is there. But it can be really intricate. And that is why having a trained HR professional who understands the laws, because they come in all of the onboarding, and all that paperwork, there's a lot of fines and penalties that can happen just because processes aren't being followed, and so what I would say, what can you do is look at your onboarding process now. And of course, COVID-19.
Okay, I just looked at it. I don't have one. I just looked at it. I don't have one.
No, you do have one. If you think you don't have one, you actually do have one. Like, what do you do now? Is it you just throw somebody in and hope that the office manager controller fills out all of the paperwork that they have to do and gets them into whatever systems, gets all of their usernames and passwords? What you need to do is sit down and write all of that down, because whether you do the process up front or behind, there's a process. You have one. So make a list of all of those things. Figure out how you're going to do it. A lot of some dealerships are even still on a paper process, right? And they have paper files, and they have this and that. That can all still be accomplished. And even in this COVID world, it's basically it's a process. We're good at processes. If you need to make a map, make a map, but you have to start looking at what you have, and then seeing how you can change it and making those changes. Every dealer is unique, right? So this is another thing that I say all the time too, like, every dealers are unique. So I can't say, here's your process, here's what you need to do, because it might not work for another dealer group. It is the 30,000 feet description that does work, but every dealer is different. So you have to look at your individual processes and work on them and how they're going to work for you.
So are there areas that you see commonly just being missed or avoided completely?
Avoided completely. And one that often worries me that is avoided completely is training, proper training, particularly now in the crisis that we're still in. I mean, I'm in the United States, so it's quite a crisis right now. We're in a place where we've all had to become agile, right? In how we are navigating this environment. So training when you're onboarding people, that's something that is often missed. And right now it's super important because now you have new safety protocols that if you are bringing on new employees, hopefully you've got your process down, but those protocols need to be communicated again.
And what about I think we were talking a little bit about re-onboarding. So people that maybe were furloughed or were let go and that are coming back, obviously they need to be, I guess, re-onboarded or retrained. Is that kind of what your thoughts are?
That's a great question. Reboarding is kind of like this new-ish word that we're using for just that. So when you have a furloughed employee, what we're talking about is an employee where because of this pandemic, they were on it, things closed, this and that. But the employment relationship was not terminated. So technically they were still your employee. When you're reboarding that employee, one of the things that's important is the training that I talked about. The new training that they would not be aware of. There are still some things you want to go through. And we have had to, we found ways, right? Almost everybody now has a remote sales process. I don't know anybody that doesn't. We've figured that out. It is actually possible, and it all depends on the dealer group, right? How much technology do you have? What's your appetite for more technology? What's your budget for that technology? There are so many different processes out there, and a lot of different platforms that can be used for onboarding in this environment where we must be physically distant from people, so
hey, go ahead, Sandy, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Did you have another question?
Well, as we're running out of time here, I just wanted to be sure that we had an opportunity to just touch on this subject while we have both of you on the phone, on the call here. And Jessi, I'd like to hear from you on this subject. Now we have an employee, we've onboarded the employee, and the employee's in the 6th or 7th or 8th month, and they're not living up to our expectations. How do we begin a performance evaluation process? Or Jessi, can you share with us your feedback on handling employee coaching and employee feedback initially as they start to get started and you're disappointed, but you don't want to lose them?
So I guess I can start with why. My question would be, why did it get to 8 months or 9 months?
Well, let's say it's
Right,
3. What I want to ask you is, if you could give us some coaching on how to coach, how do you handle that I want to get this person to the next level who just started with me?
So you're talking about specifically training? Because training is not my area of expertise. My areas of expertise is making sure that you have the right people in place from the beginning and that you have a really good understanding as to what they're going to need in order to be successful in that role. If you don't have that, you're going to experience more problems down the road, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days out. And there should be a plan and a process of onboarding during that time to have a better chance of that person succeeding. I don't think it's just how do you get the most out of that person, but you got to look at your own internal process and say, you know, what part do we play in this and how can we work together to make sure that happens? When there's a break there, that's where you're going to start to experience problems, I think.
So Pam, tell us what you mean by what you just wrote there. I'm sorry, Barry, just one second. I just wanted to hear from Pam about, she just told us asking employees, tell us what you meant there, Pam, and what do you get from that?
Well, in my experience in dealerships, when you're talking to the employees, there's always something else they would like to learn or another department that they would like to be in, because really they're not happy. So if they don't get that opportunity to learn something else, but stay in that same dealership, they're going to leave and they're going to get that training somewhere else, and they're going to learn that information and then go to another dealership and use it. So if you actually ask an employee, hey, I see you're kind of unsettled. Is there something else you would like to learn? And they will actually tell you. It's shocking. They'll say, you know what? I really would like to be in the service department. I know a lot about parts, but it's really not my thing. I want to deal with the people. I like the hustle, you know, whatever it is. And then you figure out a way to train them in that department. And then you have someone who knows parts and they know service. It's just,
Can I just jump in and say one thing here? Like, the number one reason we hear often why people are looking for another job has a lot to do with their managers, who's managing them. So when you want to find out, you know, what's bothering that person, or what we like to say, like stay interviews as opposed to exit interviews, the stay interview focuses more on, you know, kind of addressing those issues before it gets to the point of the person, you know, saying, you know, that's it, I've had it, I want to start looking for something else. But it's important that that person is not the manager most of the time, because that's, the manager usually has some role in their dissatisfaction. So I'm just putting it out there that you might want to assign that to somebody else in the dealership.
yeah.
Really want to find out like the truth behind why maybe they're underperforming, or maybe, like you said, they might have interest in some other areas.
Yeah, 100%. You're right.
I was just going to weigh in
You
on
already
that.
had a question too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was just going to comment, for those that are not 100% sure where to start, the offboarding is probably the number one place to actually start, to actually gather information of what your onboarding should look like. So what are the problems? Oh, I didn't get any training. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. I never got introduced to my manager for 2 months. And you start drilling down and actually finding out, okay, this is how I'm going to build my onboarding process based on what I'm doing wrong right now.
Yes.
And honestly, listen to the people when they're leaving, because that's what they're going to tell their next employer of what your culture's like. And that is going to determine who's going to come work for you a year from now. The other thing I wanted to weigh in on is back to what you were saying, Rick, is when you're looking to deal with an employee that is not performing to what your expectations are, when you hire somebody, you go into your calendar and you put a 30-day, a 60-day, and an 80-day calendar reminder in your calendar, and it pops up in the morning and you've got a notification. You've had 3 notifications to talk to this person, deal with the issue, or move on. One of the 2 things are going to happen. So just wanted to bring that to the table, because yes, the onboarding is very important, but sometimes you've got to learn what to do in your onboarding by talking to your people and their offboarding. And be honest with yourself. Don't lie to yourself, because that is just going to be a catastrophe again. So again, it's been a good conversation. I just wanted to weigh in from the retail side on that front.
Yeah, and I think you're onto something, Barry, with the 30, 60, and 90-day calendar invites, so that you can remind yourself to do those sessions. And I think the same thing holds true to that onboarding process, to certainly have, by day 3, these 4 things have got to be accomplished with a new employee. By day 7, these 7 things have to be accomplished with the new employee. Having that checklist and being able to check them off one at a time. Has the training started? Has the paperwork been completed? Has he signed off on his compensation plan? Has she been introduced to the other departmental managers? Have we had our initial coaching session? Did I ask for feedback? All of those things should be on a checklist.
And one of the things that makes it difficult in a smaller facility where you're not onboarding 30 people at a time is I found it exceptionally, we only brought people on one day of the week. So Monday was our day. It wasn't a random Thursday or a Friday or can you start just after your month end or whatever. It was always Monday. And we had a process that we went through. Everybody knew we were going to go for lunch on Monday. And these 5 people were going to be there. It was in their calendars. It was all just set up when we said, yes, we like this person, we're going to do it. The swag bag was pulled out of the parts department and sitting on their desk, and the old business cards from the last person were gone, and the old pens and the lunches were all out of the desk, and everything was cleaned out, and this person was invited, and reception knew that to expect them, and it just was a completely different environment, and it changed our turnover. It's completely different.
Barry just said exactly what it looks like. Like, that is perfect. Having a process. I mean, that's amazing. I'm over here like, yay, shaking my head and applauding, because in traditional onboarding and traditional human resources, onboarding technically can take up to a year. the whole process, if you look at it that way. Part of the check back, when and it should be 30, 60, 90, sometimes even more, even if it's just walk around, hey, how's it going? How are you acclimating? And when we're talking about coaching, we first need to teach our managers how to go from boss to coach. I always look, if there's an underperforming employee, which is a fantastic question, and something that in our industry we often look at, like, we're not that great at it. We're not that great at addressing the performance issues until you're ready to pull the plug. At least that's my
not.
Right.
One thing just to weigh in really quickly on is we caught ourselves a little bit. It's not 30, 60, 90, it's 30, 60, 80. Because if you're going to make a decision that is not in their best interest, you can't be doing that on day 91.
Do it before their introductory period is over.
So
Barry and I would get along, I think. That's awesome. That's awesome. This has been such a great conversation.
Any other questions for anybody? Any other thoughts?
Oh, and one thing I did want to say, Pamela, what Pamela talked about creating career paths, it's such an important piece I think that it's a really important piece for our industry, because in the very beginning, Rick, you talked about your processes are like from 1989, right? Like that's where you started and that's where you're staying. You also mentioned generational changes. The newer millennials and Gen Z have such different needs, wants, and fears. And so I really believe that we have to create a value proposition for those candidates that's going to help them want to work for you.
Yeah, in regards to this point that Sandy is bringing up, a lot of our companies, have traditional job descriptions, which we know after somebody's hired, they never look upon and they're forgotten. So few companies I have worked, they have what is called an agreement of purpose between the manager in that determined segment with the employee, where literally they're going to rewrite what type of expectations do they have, especially in the beginning, the onboarding and the first year, what the management will offer, what the employee is going to offer, and also, more important, what the facility and infrastructure will provide. If your facility has an awesome coffee, different than others, well, we're going to welcome you here with an awesome coffee, right? And that's what Apple, Google, all these great companies in the world, they provide value to the companies that is forgotten. After they get hired and they get in the floor, it's just taken for granted. So it's really good to have on top of the job description a small upfront contract between management, the employee, and the putting down together all the benefits that that employee will perceive value, right? And update that if it changes.
I think that's phenomenal, Tiago. The industry that we're in is the weakest when it comes to job descriptions. We're just not good. You know, Steve Schwartz is sitting there. He's the general manager of a dealership. Steve, I'm not pointing you out, and you don't have to answer, right? But do you have job descriptions for every single one of your staff? Christian Thompson, do you have job descriptions for every single one of your staff? And then think, well, should I have one? Should I have one? Is it only right? Is it only fair to the sales associate that you give them a job description so you know exactly, they know exactly what the expectations are? Look at Sandy's face, right? Do we have job descriptions? Melinda, do you have a job description for your service manager? Have outlined expectations of what he's expected to do? Do we or don't we? It's a tough question, you know. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, I don't know how to write a job description.
We're talking
I've
about,
never
Rick,
done
I'm going
that
to jump
before.
in because I know we're running out of time, but this is very important, I believe. We're really talking about two different things. Your job description is very important because you need to have written down that the employee understands your essential duties that you must be able to have in order to, now we're going to get into HR, in order to do the job. Anybody needs to do that. The other thing we're talking about is a performance agreement. These are the things that you need to do in order to hit these marks, hit the, you know, and that also, both of these things need to be understood by the employee. You know, your performance agreement is going to be the black and white that you use when you are addressing performance, right? Like, here it is, it's written down. These are your minimums that you need to hit. And here, and if they're not doing it, then you move to, so what can I do? What can we do to help you do that? What's missing? And everybody's going to be different with that. So I think it's just really important. Both of those things that you're talking about are super important. Your job description with the essential duties, frankly, that is your defense in the courtroom right there. When could they, and it's also going to help you if you, you know, in this country, we have a lot of disability, like it's called the ADA. And so if someone needs an accommodation, that's also where you're going to find out how you can accommodate someone. So,
yeah, there's so many different important elements when it comes to HR. It's a wonderful conversation today. We will extend the conversation next week on next week's call. Next week, we'll talk a little bit more about some specifics on job descriptions, how to create them, how to build them, coaching and mentoring your staff as they continue to mature and their tenure of experience with your company, and some other valuable things that I think that we can sink our teeth into. So with that said, it's the top of the hour. If anyone has any other questions, we'd like to put them out there. Very good. We'd like to get an opportunity for both Jessi and Sandy to spend some one-on-one time with any of you. If you have the need or desire to pick their brain any further, or would like to spend just 10 minutes one-on-one talking about how their company can help you, how Jessi can help you if you're looking for a senior manager or a manager, or what the costs are involved in those kind of things. That's what we do on Friday, so we'd love to be able to partner the two of you up together. on a Friday call. So Ian will work through that. If you'd like to get some details about that, Jessi and Sandy, we certainly would love to have you. Ian, in closing remarks.
No, lots of great stuff. I'm looking forward to the job description process and maybe like a white paper on how to build that. How does that, maybe there's a discussion about sort of the key components on how those documents get created and what's the best practice. Because job descriptions I see in not just auto, but every industry, you see them almost like they're copies of the other ones. People aren't doing much writing. And I think that's a big opportunity to differentiate. And probably to cover your ass too.
Well, and I'll let everyone go, but I can tell you this, that, and I've been in the automobile business for almost 40 years. I work for CDK. And CDK has a job description, I assure you. And it's one of my greatest assets as an employee of CDK, because I know what they expect from me. What are the minimum acceptable standards? What are the minimal acceptable requirements that they require from me? And I can just look at my job description as an employee, and we owe it to our employees to give them this opportunity, and then evaluate myself. And I know myself whether I'm accomplishing my objectives and my goals or not, because I have a job description. But anyway, I get passionate. Thank you guys, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. It was a pleasure to have you here today, and we will see you next week.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.